Hello, how do humans? And welcome to the Rediscover Human podcast. This is episode 11, master number 11. And Chris has been kidnapped, people. He's been abducted.
He's gone missing since the last episode.
He's gone missing. Wayfair have had him. There's a $28,000 guy on the... No, that is dark stuff, isn't it, to start with. But yeah, no Chris this week. He did such a good job last week. We thought, you know what, we'll save you for... we need to save him for the right occasions, don't we?
Yeah, for sure. I think Chris is great to come in and give those world updates.
Yeah, because we're totally think that's important to talk about, have those conversations. Mm-hmm. But we don't want to make that every conversation.
Yeah, I think that's right. So
we'll bring in his superpowers when it's necessary, which seemingly might be again next week because of what's kicking off in the world as the continual growth of what's happening. But for now, we'll let that all go to the fringe of our minds, and we're going to focus on a certain topic today, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. So today we're going to talk about diet.
Yeah, which feels like we've talked about it, but we've not done like a specific episode on it, have we?
No. And I think like we've both had quite a mad journey in terms of like what we've done personally with our diets. You with, veganism, your water fasting, and then going to carnivore and where you are now.
Yeah.
And me on the other end of the spectrum, coming at it through a sport perspective, eating like very high carb and going through various different diets, doing bodybuilder diets and that sort of thing.
While doing different training and ketogenic. We've covered a lot of bases between us, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Been around.
And I think it would be good to just talk through kind of what we've done in terms of a diet and follow a bit of a timeline with it. So
yeah.
I know you sort of got introduced to the world of consciously eating through veganism.
Yeah.
I started paying attention to my diet because of rugby. Mm-hmm. And then just kind of like walk through our personal evolutions going back and forth.
Yeah.
And then talk about where we're at now.
Sounds good. So I start.
Yeah, I think let's kick off with veganism.
I won't make it too long, but yeah, I was a professional athlete my whole adult life from 18 kind of onwards, as I think I touched on probably in the first episode. But then in 2012, so I would have been 23, 24, I just got introduced to veganism as a conscious choice. Wasn't anything to do with nutrition at that point at all. It was just like, look how animals are being killed. When you eat meat, you're supporting these animals being killed. And you know what? It's not even a necessity. And coming from starting getting into the spirituality and through Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, learning about my own ego and like, what right do I have for my choice to cause this suffering to this animal? It was the first time I'd been faced with that. I wasn't raised with that awareness. You kind of semi-know, but you don't really know. So I was like, okay, dang, I better change my ways. I'm trying to be a nice human. I'm trying to not harm this earth. I love the planet. I love the earth. So I'm going to do my best by it. And so veganism was the most obvious choice at that point with everything I was presented with, what they'd laid out. And so I jumped into it and I felt better. I felt better for a year, maybe 2 years. But I never felt perfect, but certain health markers went up. I did feel, my joints did start to feel a lot better. I felt lighter. I was quite bulky before then.
So when you were, doing free running at quite a high level before veganism, at that point you'd never sort of even thought about diet? No,
I was eating crisps every day, chocolate bar once a day, probably McDonald's maybe once or twice a week. And I was, in my teens, in my early 20s, you didn't have to think about that stuff. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't like eating rubbish, but I was totally like unconscious. Like I ate 10 sliders at White Castle and I went
I've never tried White Castle.
I went to a Heart Attack Grill in Vegas and had the massive burger there. And yeah, I indulged in, I wasn't like totally like out there, but I enjoyed a good burger.
Yeah. It's crazy because I see that a lot with athletes as well. It's because they're training so often. Mm-hmm. A lot of people can kind of get away with eating not a very clean diet, and aesthetically they still look great because they're doing so much training.
Yeah.
But Paul Chek talks about this all the time, where he calls people fit sick people.
Yeah.
So they may look great on the outside, but on the inside, not so good.
I was definitely puffy. Some people think I looked more muscular. I was more inflamed. For me, the feeling and the look of it was more inflamed. But I was strong because I was doing a lot of handstands and I was stable, but I wasn't like mobile. I was stiff and strong, you know? So I was just kind of like an ox. But it was fine. You know, it really seems literally like from 20 to 30, you go through a period. It's just very slow. It takes years and years of like, you don't have to be conscious at all till you have to be like almost fully conscious at the time you're 30, don't you? To like how you're eating otherwise. So it's that period of your life, you really do some growing up. So some health markers did feel better and others I wasn't quite aware of, because you're so focused on the positives and the gains. But it led me to explore further within veganism. How can I tweak this? Now I'm conscious of my diet. How can I do the best version of this diet possible? But you've explored with vegetarianism, right? Or did you ever try veganism?
So I did a meditation retreat in the Himalayas for 3 weeks, and the retreat was vegan, apart from we had like a hot tea every morning with lemon and honey. So it's not strictly vegan.
But other than honey, it was vegan.
But other than honey, it was vegan.
Okay.
But I was telling Lewis on the way over, actually, I snuck in a 3 kilo bag of protein.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm going for 3 weeks. I was training a lot of the time. I didn't want to lose weight while I was there, so I was having 2 protein shakes a day just to keep some protein coming in.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, but I didn't eat meat or have dairy for 3 weeks. Or have like cheese or milk or anything. I was just having this protein powder.
Yeah.
So kind of, but not kind of at the same time, if you know what I mean.
3 weeks into it. So for me, from vegan, I started to explore raw vegan and fruitarianism, and I went to a fruitarian like kind of retreat in near Woodstock. It was called Woodstock Fruit Festival, and it was the first time I'd ever eaten fully raw. And the first few days, you feel kind of really empty in your stomach because you're so used to eating heavy cooked foods. Yeah, and I felt hungry, but by day 3 or 4, you start to feel so alive. You start to feel light. You're really kind of hydrated and just like buzzing, and there's good energy. The sun shines out. You're swimming in the lake, having fun, dancing around a fire with people. And so I felt this like real goodness in my body of like, wow, if I cut out cooked food, and spiritually and looking at like no animals cook their food on earth. There's certain markers that just led me to that it made sense that humans should be sort of fruitarians or raw vegans. Fruitarian especially because we want to cause the least suffering, right? And it's a fast path once you realize you don't want to hurt animals. Yeah, plants are living too. And so when you eat fruit, you don't kill the plant, you get the seed. Most of the time when you eat fruit, you swallow the seed. And then when you poop, you got this perfect pile of manure with the seed in it for it to help the plant grow. So it seems like this, for me, that was the circle of life. Was like, so eat the fruit.
I think that's one of the big sort of gripes potentially I have with veganism. And I think a lot of people get into veganism for the right reason, and it's an amazing intention. And don't get me wrong, I think factories farming is just as bad as anyone.
Yeah.
And I really promote buying local, grass-fed, organic meat, and that's a big thing that we're both on right now.
Yeah.
But with veganism, one of the arguments I've seen from the sort of carnivore spectrum is that when all this monocropping's going on to produce all these vegetables, a lot of animals die in the process of that through getting churned up by these combine harvesters and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so obviously when you go raw fruitarian,
it's a lot.
That takes all of that out of the equation as well.
For the most part. I mean, there is the story of Paul Chek and his neighbours having a persimmon farm, and they hired hunters to shoot all the deer that were eating the persimmons. Oh, really? So it's like, even if you're eating persimmons, you could still be supporting the death of some deer or something like that, which is, it's just so crazy. It's so hard to know, to be sure. So no one's can really be right or wrong, but from my intention of how I was living, it made sense. And so certain health markers really picked up when I went that way. Just clarity of mind, of thought, I was able to just speak my thought. I felt really spiritually connected. Like I say, I felt lighter. I like to feel lighter in my body, but I never had like explosive like oomph.
Yeah.
But as we'll go into later, everything kind of has its cost. And even emotionally, I actually felt much more untouchable. when I was raw vegan. But what it felt like, and I tried to explain it once before, we'll try again, is when you're raw vegan, it's kind of like you've got all these emotions, right? And they're like below the surface, and they're kind of jagged rocks in like a river, and they're at the bottom of the river. And when I was raw vegan, I was so high, like kind of hydrated and not dry from eating cooked food, that the river was just full. And so those sharp rocks and emotions that were buried down weren't a factor. They were still there, but they weren't coming into surface in my life. And so when I ate cooked food, I got more emotional, and it would bring all these things that are still there in both raw and not raw. They felt closer to the surface, to piercing the surface of me. And so it didn't, all of these diets, they don't necessarily heal you. They just don't harm you as much as other diets or whatever, but they either allow you access to your emotions to face the emotions more, or they allow you comfort from your emotions. And that's one of the things I really learned with raw veganism, was that when I came out of it, a lot of the emotions that you think you're healing from are still all there. And so it's healing. Diet is not, it's not a healer. It's just not a hindrance or a problem. So I'd like to do an episode actually on healing modalities, straight, because there's so much stuff that's outside of nutrition
I think
that we can go into.
So for me, nutrition can be an amazing tool to heal your body. Yeah. But
it can
to
replenish
release emotional trauma,
yeah,
that it's not the tool for that.
It's not the tool, but you have to line it up with doing that stuff, I think, because you can eat food that suppresses your ability to.
It's a gateway to being able to do the emotional work, to release that trauma.
Yeah.
You've got to have you got to have a clear vessel. Your body's got to be clear to be able to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're eating terribly or unaligned with how you should be eating, and you're trying to do that emotional work, it's not going to be effective or as effective as it would be.
If you're eating McDonald's and cake every day, it's just not. Or you'll be emotional, but it won't be the true emotion that you're actually trying to get to. It's some surface emotion of I look fat in the mirror or something like that, which isn't necessarily the root cause of what the emotion is. But we can get into that another time. With raw vegan, though, it did make so much sense to me, and I did feel better in many ways, but in other ways it didn't give me fuel for life. And when I'm trying to reflect on like why it does and doesn't work in these different areas, is possibly my whole upbringing was eating cooked food. My whole upbringing was eating a certain way. Then you can go into genetics, and you could go into blood type. People talk about blood type diet a lot. I think genetics is probably a bigger factor, but maybe not. But if I was raised always on cooked food and cooked vegetables, and then now it's like your gut is built a certain way. Like I did handstand my whole childhood and like teenage years, and I could not handstand for a year, and I could hold up a handstand for a minute, no problem. I know that's in me. There's something you do when you're younger that you just have the ability to do your whole like kind of mid-adult life because you did it when you were younger.
Yeah,
you know, like they say like riding a bike, but kind of like even more nuance than that. So certain things I did at that period. And I really think, so what if our whole gut microbiome is kind of really tailored around to how we ate? And it's just so hard later in life to adapt that. So my whole life, my food was much easier to access the minerals because it was always cooked. And so as an adult, I'm eating these massive raw salads. I'm eating all this more fruit than I've ever eaten in my years as a childhood. In a year's worth of eating fruit, I'd probably eaten more fruit than I'd eaten in my whole 18 years up until that point in 1 year as a fruitarian. So my whole taste buds, my gut, yes, things can adapt, but like I'm saying, there's still something you do when you're younger that your body's just so much better at.
I think ancestrally as well, when your family, your lineage is eating that way for X amount of years, you're born, your biological makeup is made up from them.
I think that's a factor. I just think that there's the bigger factor is what you did, because you could take an Eskimo and make them be born in like Thailand and raise them as a Thai, and their gut will probably still adapt to that way, but there's still...
That would be an interesting experiment to do.
It would be. So I think that's a factor. I just think the bigger factor is probably how you grew up eating, and I didn't grow up that way, and so to try and adapt to that, I could understand it all with my logical mind, spiritually all I want, but the times I've been raised in and living in are so different, from those times, even though all the beliefs that I want to believe in the world doesn't make it true right now. So I had to have a real lessen in pride and beliefs and come away from that lifestyle and maybe revisit it. I definitely was led in that direction that we can go further into that. But the path isn't always a straight one. It's not like, I always say, it's like not vegan, raw vegan, liquidarian, breatharian. I still like, in that lifestyle, I see breatharian as a possibility. I do believe some people when they are breatharian. I believe there's so much more nuances to get to that level of being able to live that way and satiate yourself off of air alone. But the path isn't straight. So I've had to come back to animal products to sort of take a step back to re-establish the next plan of action to get back on that path, you know?
So just in terms of the timeline, so you started doing free running, you were eating whatever, you know, you're eating
anything,
bad food.
Yeah.
You were a bit inflamed from that, but still.
I mean, I had knee surgeries and stuff when I was 20 or 18, 19 years old. So I definitely had signs that I never related to diet that I wish I could go back now and like try and solve it with nutrition. But I definitely...
That's another point as well. It drives me up the wall because I got a lot of friends that are, you know, professional athletes and they're running into injuries. And then they're coming off the back of their injury and they're paying no attention to their diet.
Yeah.
What do you think you're rebuilding that muscle from or that ligament from?
Yeah.
You're rebuilding it from the food you're eating. You need to be putting the best quality food into your body to rebuild that ligament or that tendon or whatever it is in the best quality, in the best way.
Yeah. And the reason it's strained in the first, like the amount of inflammation in my body and stiffness that I felt, and then I'm continuing to train through it because I didn't know I could feel another way. You're just causing mad stress. If I could have just took a step back, altered diet, and then just re-establish from there. But yeah, it's all these athletes that have all these injuries and surgeries that could be so avoidable if they were able to adjust the diet. But it's just, you just don't want to look at it until you're forced to look at it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
And a massive point I find is when you train, you stress your body. And so you only have so much energy in the day to sort of burn. You have an energy bar, and children have massive energy bars. And when you sleep at night, it kind of refills the energy bar. But when you do a workout, a run, a heavy session, you can burn through that energy bar very quickly, right? And when the energy bar is lower, you don't have energy to make better choices. You don't feel it. You feel it when that energy bar is lower. Emotion and energy are linked, definitely.
Yeah.
When your energy is down, you feel more emotional and you want an easier fix. And the taste buds is one of the quickest ways to get an emotional pickup in the short term. In the long term, it's really not a solution. So acknowledging that when you're stressed, you make worse food choices. You've got cortisol running around. Is it? Have you heard that cortisol and
they sit on a seesaw.
Sugar is on a seesaw, right?
Yeah.
So, and stressed is desserts backwards. Like that is, to me, that is so huge. To some people, they go, it's just 2 words, right?
No one's ever said that to me
is
before.
desserts backwards. When you're stressed, you go for desserts. If you acknowledge that, it can, you know, so training is a stressor. When you're stressed, you're going to go for those choices. So trying to train within a place where you can keep your energy bar, you can use energy, but don't go so low that your emotions are down and you make worse food choices, because it's either an uphill, you know, it can be an uphill battle, or it can be, you can surf and ride the wave.
I'll just break that down a little bit more. So basically stress, cortisol is the stress hormone, and glucose sit on a seesaw. So for anyone watching, you've got them on either side like this, right? Okay, so say you're doing stuff which is stressing you out, and that could be, you know, an argument with a loved one, that could be a shitty email at work, that could be a stressful car journey, getting cut up in traffic, it could be training, it could be a positive stressor, anything. You're going to release cortisol into your system. Now, your body knows on a subconscious level, if you add carbohydrate into the system, that's going to bring the cortisol down. But it's a short-term fix. Because and that's why when you feel stressed, you reach for that chocolate bar, or you reach for anything. Because
they can't coexist in the body, right?
They can't coexist. So you know by introducing the sugar that the cortisol is going to come down.
You don't feel the cortisol stress,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's very much short-term fix. We all know what, you know, overdoing
because then the cost
sugar
of
does.
You
know, you're going to be, that's why so many people in modern society have got type 2 diabetes and all this sort of stuff.
They're stressed, they're going for those desserts.
Okay, so started off with free running, weren't conscious of what you're eating, got into veganism. At what point did you become the raw fruitarian? How many years in?
Quite quickly, like 2 or 3 years in. I did stints of like 3 to 6 months at a time. Like after these festivals, I'd use them as like a kickstart, and then I'd come back and I'd maintain it. But I was eating so much I was just going to the supermarket and buying so many watermelons and bananas, and I was eating so much foreign fruit that wasn't organic and isn't even like heirloom, like natural kind of fruits and vegetables that isn't from where I'm around. But like I say, I'd feel better in so many areas, and it felt like the path to something. But in other areas of my life were just completely dropping away, and I was just kind of blinkered to like the negatives that were going on. But it and then that kind of led me to going, well, less food, feel better, like towards fasting, you know.
Yeah. And at what point did you? Because your health was deteriorating, wasn't it, towards the end of veganism?
Yeah.
And I've seen pictures of you. You were super thin at one point.
That was raw vegan or fasting. I don't mind being thin, but yeah, there's healthy thin and not.
Yeah, you looked a bit gaunt, man, in the face.
Yeah.
So at what point did you think, right, okay, I don't feel good, I'm going to go into my fast? How many years in?
That was 6 years in.
So
and that was like having explored all the different nuances within veganism.
Yeah.
That was having explored all the like, I tried supplements, but there was something in it like that I never felt better off the supplements, and it's like it just never gave me what you'd expect to get from it. I tried nuanced like fringe things like urine therapy, and then I just was like, I've done raw vegan, but I never felt where I know I can feel. And the only thing I could identify was that was all because of post-vegan days. That was from all the books I was reading, Arnold Ehret, mucusless diet. All of that stuff is still toxins, is stored in my system. All the dairy and meat and bread I ever ate is stored in my system. The only way to get it out is to do a fast. And it takes 21 days to get deeper enough into the fast that you can do this. So I thought, let me just start with a 7-day fast. This is 6 years in. I was just sick of just not feeling good in my joints. Still didn't feel good. I didn't have energy to train. I didn't feel like I just couldn't. I didn't feel comfortable in the world. Felt kind of slightly depressed, but I never like attached to my depression. So I kind of like always recognized, as long as I'm trying to solve it, I'm not going to, you know what I mean? If you're just sat doing nothing, then you feel shit.
Yeah.
But I was always hungry to solve it. I was always trying something, and you have that slight placebo when you try something new and you feel a bit better, and then eventually it settles and you're like, actually, I don't think that's the thing. It was, which comes back to you being the placebo maybe. But so I did a 2-day fast, came out the 2-day fast, ate a bit of food, felt like high, felt amazing, was like, oh, this is the way. Let me just do a little more. Let me chip away at more of this. Let me try and bang this out in one go. Let me do a 7-day fast. Ended up, making a long story short, 35 days in, broke the fast with some fruit, some watermelon, burnt my tongue with the fruit, realized that fruit actually is really like, we're so desensitized because we have sugar every day or every few days, that actually when you eat sugar and you eat fruit and you've not had fruit in a long time, it is actually quite toxic, especially the fruit that we have, or, you know, and there's this melons are just completely unnatural. And that's not to demonize melons, you know, have your melons, enjoy it. But it just made me realize, like,
you just be conscious of what you're actually eating.
Yeah, like when you don't eat this stuff for a while and you eat it, there's a level of like, I don't know if it's acidity or what, that like burns the human skin. Like I felt like I was coming out of the fast, I was like a baby. I was like a newborn. Like you wouldn't feed a newborn, just some intense hit of like.
Well, I think as well the sugar levels, because people don't realize that you know, fruit in their natural state, however many years ago before, you know, we started GMO and genetically modifying these crops and crossbreeding different, you know, strains of plants and stuff like that, these fruits would have had way less sugar in than they do today. You know, we've genetically engineered them to have way higher sugar content, so they look perfect and all this sort of stuff. So they taste better. Yeah, that's what, you know, the supermarket wants them to look perfect and taste great. So they've got a higher sugar content. Yeah,
but this whole time I'm fueled by trying to do the least harm, and I'm not fueled by doing no harm, because I understand that to live as a human is a cost. Like otherwise, it's just suicidal. Like it's like you have to acknowledge that your life has a cost to the planet. Otherwise, why even bother? So I was kind of trying to tread this line of like, I want to live in harmony with the earth and be fruitarian, but I want to be as healthy. Oh, that makes sense. Fruitarian is the best of both worlds. But then coming to fasting, in a way, that was kind of like God leading me to do no harm. Like that's the ultimate way is when you're fasting, sat at home, I'm having no cost on the planet, on the earth, no cost in the shops, not supporting either which way of industries. And I'm just there, sat in that space. And whether I wasn't truly like contemplating it or not, it was still going on inside. You're still like, things are happening emotionally, spiritually, like things go on.
Is it not the ultimate cost though, in a way, because you're jeopardizing your own ability to go out into the world and, you know, make it a better place.
Well, that's it. It was the like end game. Do you know what I mean? It's like veganism felt almost suicidal at that point. Well, but I wasn't aware it was the veganism. I was blaming it on everything but the diet. And it's not the diet. It's not those foods. It's just the lack of other food, the lack of other nutrients that I needed at that chapter in my life, at this moment in time in the 21st century, with what's around us and the matrix that we live in. So coming out of it didn't feel good, but still wanting to do the best by the planet, by Earth, by animals, by plants, by humanity. I wanted to help other humans because I saw other humans too. I was looking around within that community, realizing they're all looking to me as their leader of epitome of health, because I'm the vegan athlete, and I didn't feel that good. And I'm like, who do I get to look to that I'm inspired by? Because there wasn't any. And I'm like, well, if I'm honest, I don't feel good. So, and I look out, no one else was inspiring me. There's a couple like Harry runs. There's a few runners that I respect, but it wasn't enough to like keep me like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. So I just knew the lesson I got coming out of the fast, coming back to veganism. Issues came back, itchy. You know, I don't want to go into my health ailments, but just markers in your body. I don't need a label by a doctor. I don't need blood tests. I knew something wasn't right. I knew God gave me the power to solve it within my own self, my psyche, my experiments. I could find a solution, and it led me to try animal products again, and coming at it from a whole new angle of, I bought some local eggs from down the road. These eggs, I can see the chickens running around, but the vegan me is buying avocados and coconuts and watermelons that have traveled God knows how many miles. That, like you said, in the cropping process or whatever, there's still animals being killed in the harvesting and in the poisons they put around vegetable fields, these rat poisons they put around, that like rats take 3 days to die on this poison that's protecting vegetables. And, you know, coming at it from like being, my blinkers to all those kind of things was open, because once your health goes, you have to be open at that point. You have to question things. So my health went to a point when I was questioning those things. Came back with some salmon and some eggs of the acknowledgement that at least I can pray for this salmon and give thanks for this salmon. I've told this story so many times, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But I came back to animal products and acknowledged their place. I acknowledged that all choices have a cost. I acknowledged that all things that we eat were living at some point, regardless. And so it was just like, just let me reset from this point. And so that was like nearly 2 years ago now, was just a huge reset that I needed. And it was a crazy 20s for me.
A couple questions.
Yeah.
One, when you were supplementing during veganism, were you supplementing with all the nutrients that you would get in animal products?
I wasn't a massive supplementer, but I was eating a lot of whole food organic products.
Yeah.
I was really believing that if it's natural diet for us, I shouldn't need to supplement.
Yeah.
But then I did get B12 sprays. I got like vitamin D3. There's the ones that you see videos of people saying you can get DHAs on vegan this way, and so then you see other people saying you can't. There's vitamins you cannot get on a vegan diet.
Yeah.
So you don't know who to believe. So I was just trying to like.
It's a minefield, man.
It's a minefield. So I was leaving those kind of to other vegans to do that. That was their way of doing it. My way of doing it was really, and I was trying to do it a really natural way.
Yeah.
I really believed in nature and that if it's truly natural, and it felt like it was an intuitive choice to do it that way. But you know, we can be led astray by that.
I think as well, it's like you're fighting an uphill battle because, like we just covered, a lot of we didn't cover, but on that same point where we're saying, you know, fruit and vegetables have got a much higher sugar content today than they would have X amount of years ago. Well, on the flip side of that, fruits and vegetables have got a much lower nutrient content because of how much we've damaged the soil.
Yeah.
And so you're feeding yourself on fruits and vegetables that would have got a lot less nutrients in than they should do naturally. Yeah. So maybe if that wasn't the case, you know, you could have felt better following a vegan diet.
Oh, like back in the day, and eating season, there might be a way, but I just really felt at some point there was just something missing. And like when I ate that salmon that first night, I had a wet dream. I felt warmer, certain markers. I really felt a depression lift from my mind. I didn't realize how depressed I was until I came out of it because it came on so slow. And as we've discussed before, the body brings everything if the body's shutting down, the body's suffering, your mind suffers too, but it will try to associate things in your world around you for the reason that it's suffering, but it won't go, it's because I'm malnourished. You know what I mean? It's like a frog boiling slowly in a pot. It happens so slowly. And so I'm looking at other things in my life of why I'm suffering, relationships and everything. And it was just my body shutting down more than anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, if you look at, fat for an example, like fat plays some really important roles in the body.
Yeah. I was really low fat, like towards the end as well.
Super low fat. And one of them is you create your sex hormones from it. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you ate some salmonella wet dream. Yeah. Because you would have just kicked off your sperm production again, your testosterone production.
I've had one since off of honey, by the way. Just put that out there. Really? In case anyone else, I had like a jar of honey, like half a jar, close to bedtime, and I had a wet dream one night. And I barely have wet dreams. I'm not this guy. I've had like 3 or 4 in my life, but there's just something with animal products and that makes you like, yeah.
Well, that doesn't tie with the fat thing, but yeah, no, be interested if anyone knows anything about that.
I would love to know what that was, because
and then the other thing is, obviously, you've got like fats like DHA, which play a really important role in brain function. Mm. So if you're not getting fats like that into your body, then your brain's not going to be functioning optimally. So, obviously you're not thinking clearly. So when you would have had that salmon's really high in DHA.
Yeah.
So you're getting these double factors where all of a sudden you're thinking more clearly. Boom. And, all your sex hormones are coming back online.
Yeah. And all this time I'm asking for healing, eating these foreign watermelons, when down the road there's, eggs and local cows in England. Yeah. Like we've got, yeah. So that was a crazy time. Anyway, we'll keep it moving.
Okay.
So you, because I think I only just started to hear of keto at that point.
Yeah.
And so I actually started, when I did come out, I started to explore more keto, and I felt my mood lift even further on that. But you are way more of an expert at keto. When did you first discover that?
So keto was actually quite late on into
Should we just explain what a ketogenic diet is for people who aren't?
Yeah, okay. So a ketogenic diet is a high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet. Mm. And it was developed in the 50s or 60s to actually help people with epilepsy. Mm. So epilepsy researchers realized that you can create these ketones when you're following a ketogenic diet, and they cross the blood-brain barrier. And so your brain can operate off ketones as opposed to glucose.
Okay.
And a lot of people with epilepsy, they'll have these epileptic fits, and I'm not sure the exact science behind it, but I think it's something to do with not being able to get adequate energy to the brain. Mm-hmm. And they realized that if these people with serious epilepsy were in ketosis, all of a sudden they wouldn't have epileptic fits. So that was how it was like sort of originally discovered. And it was used to treat epilepsy for a number of years until you had the whole Ansel Keys thing come about with the demonization of fat. Mm. So Ansel Keys was a researcher who did a load of study into diet for the World Health Organization. And he basically concluded that, high fat diets full of cholesterol and all this sort of stuff gives you heart attacks. And that's where that whole argument, which has been debunked a million times, comes from, but still so many people believe in it. And then as a result of all of that, the ketogenic diet just sort of disappeared because everyone associated high fat diets with, heart attacks and being unhealthy.
Yeah.
So disappeared. Fast forward to, the last few years, and you've got a researcher called Dominic D'Agostino, who's just absolutely incredible mind. And he was working for the Navy SEALs as a researcher into neuroscience. And one of the big problems with the Navy SEALs is when they were using oxygen rebreathers, so they would go on missions, and because they're obviously trying to do stealth missions, they were using what they called air tanks, rebreathers underwater, which bubbles don't come to the surface, so you rebreathe the oxygen. But there's a really high chance of you having a seizure when that happens. So they brought a load of neuroscientists in to go, right, okay, how can we stop our soldiers from having seizures underwater when they're trying to do these stealth missions?
Yeah.
Dominic D'Agostino was one of these guys, and he's digging into the research, and he was like, wow, actually loads of people were having epileptic fits years and years ago, and they were using this thing called the ketogenic diet to not have these epileptic fits.
Yeah.
Dug into the science behind that and thought, could ketones cross the blood-brain barrier and have the same effect when you've got these Navy SEAL divers. So he started looking into this, doing the research, and realized, yeah, it's true. If you got these guys in ketosis, they get a much, much smaller chance of having a seizure while they're underwater on the rebreathers.
Wow.
So he went to present that to the council or whoever, and they said, okay, that's brilliant, but we fuel all our soldiers on carbohydrates.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
So can you come up with that in a pill, which is just the sort of like classic Western approach to medicine, and like bring us a pill. So he went away and he developed with, a team of researchers, exogenous ketones, which are basically lab-made ketones, which they attach to salts. So they attach them to sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium, I think. And then you can ingest them. So it's literally just like a powder that you can mix into a drink. Or you can buy pre-made drinks from some places. And what they do is you can drink it and it raises your ketone levels. So all of a sudden you can be eating a high carbohydrate diet. You don't have to follow the ketogenic diet to produce the ketones, and you can just ingest the ketones and get yourself into ketosis.
Wow.
So they started using these for Navy SEAL divers, and then they realized, actually, this has got amazing application for athletes because you can be high carb, and you can also have high ketones. So you can operate on almost like dual fuel.
Yeah.
So bringing it back, the ketogenic diet, though, if you want to produce ketones naturally, you've got to follow a ketogenic diet. Now, for the people that are having seizures, it's termed medical ketosis, which your diet's got to literally be like 95% fat. So that's like a huge proportion of fat. But that's because they need their ketones at quite a high level.
Wow, yeah.
Whereas then they were looking at it and they go, well, actually, we can create another type of ketogenic diet, which is 75% fat, 20% protein, 5% carbohydrates. You can still be in ketosis, but just to a lesser extent, but you still get the majority of the benefits of ketosis. You don't need to be in this extreme level of ketosis because you're not dealing with health issues.
Yeah.
And then you get all the benefits from it, which include like sustained energy levels, decreased brain fog.
Yeah.
It helps you be able to fast. There's a bunch of benefits, and then you can take it even one step further, which is what I personally do, which is called targeted ketogenic diet, where you target additional carbs in around your training to fuel the anaerobic training zone. So anyone that's done like GCS-EP, there's ATP training zone, anaerobic and then aerobic training zone. Yeah. And the anaerobic training zone is for like moderate to high intensity exercise from 15 seconds to the 2-minute mark. Yeah. So it's like, an example was, you probably use it a lot in free running when you're doing sort of like those longer, where you're doing some explosive movements, but it's not like ATP would be like so say someone throws a shot put. Yeah. That's like one big ATP, explosive movement. That's ATP. Yeah. But say you're playing rugby and you've got to like, sort of jog, sprint across the pitch and hit a ruck, that sort of thing, that would be more like anaerobic endurance. Yeah. And we know that anaerobic endurance requires glucose to fuel it. So one of the problems is when you're following a ketogenic diet, even if it's the one where you're getting 50 grams of carbs in, you don't really have enough glucose in your system to fuel that anaerobic training zone. So what people have done to take it a step further is they've developed this thing called targeted ketogenic diet. You add 50 grams of carbs in prior to training. That knocks you out of ketosis, but it gives you the carbs to train.
What do you have?
So I'll have like a sort of slower glycolytic carb, maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours before training. So I might have like a piece of rye bread or a bit of 25 grams of rice or some sweet potatoes, something like that. And then I'll have a faster glycolytic carb just before I go training. So another 25 grams, maybe like raw honey or a piece of fruit or something like that. Yeah. And then that'll give you the carbohydrate to fuel the training source so you can perform at a really high level. You'll also burn through that carbohydrate during the training. You'll be back in ketosis by the time you finish. And for me personally, it was like revolutionary because when I started getting into the world of diet, it was through rugby. And I was eating really high carb. And I spent from the age of 15 to the age of 21, 22 on a weight gainer diet. the whole time.
Yeah.
And, you know, knowing what I know now, I know how unhealthy that is, because whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, that's a stressor on the body.
Yeah.
So, you know, anyone out there that is looking to, you know, gain muscle mass or, you know, diet down to trim up or whatever, you know, it's good. You can do it for 6, 12 weeks, eating a calorie surplus or a calorie deficit, depending on what your goal is. But you've just got to be aware that's a stress on your body. And then once you've done that, it's important to eat a maintenance for a period of time, even though that'll be a new maintenance, either higher calorie or lower calorie, depending on whether you've got bigger or smaller, to take that stress away from your body. And then say you have 3 months eating at maintenance, then you can go, okay, right, now I want to put on a bit more weight, I want to lose weight. So it's a gradual process that takes time. I didn't realize this when I was a kid. I was just like, I need to be a rugby player, I need to put on as much muscle mass as possible. So I was just eating everything I could get my hands on. So much so that I'd get up at, I remember I asked my my S&C coach when I was like 17, 18, you know, I need to put on more weight. How do I put on weight? And he was like, have a mass gainer shake at 4 a.m. So I used to set my alarm off at 4 a.m. and I'd have a pre-made mass gainer shake with like, you know, I can't remember, it was like Mass Moose or something, the brand. It was like stupid amount of calories in there, with full fat milk and a scoop of peanut butter and oats that I would have blended the night before.
Good, yeah.
Mate, it didn't taste good at 4 a.m. And I used to, honestly, I used to drink that at 4 and I used to then get up before my lectures, because I was away at college, and I'd have a massive breakfast, again, trying to put on weight. And there'd be days, lots of days, where I'd stand over the sink after I ate my breakfast with my mouth watering, because I'd be so full, trying not to throw up.
Close to vomiting, yeah.
So I spent years doing that, just trying to put on muscle mass. And then obviously realizing what I know now, the importance of sleep and growth and all this sort of stuff, and the fact that your gut has got a circadian rhythm of its own and that you don't want to be eating too close to bed.
Yeah.
You know, it's so counterintuitive. But at the time I was just a young kid trying to put on weight, blindly following these instructions. But I was a slave to food. I was such a slave to food. Like I would get, you know, hungry every 4 hours, and that saying like hangry, that was like perfectly described me. I would get hungry, I wouldn't be able to concentrate, all I'd be thinking about was food. And you know, especially with starting a business, like it's so time consuming, like, you know, and you've got meetings, and you know the world just doesn't work where you can always eat every 3 to 4 hours. And I get it, if you're like a bodybuilder or something like that and that's your like passion and your goal,
yeah,
you can do it, you know, that's what you want to do. But I think for the average person, you know, if you need to skip lunch, it's good to be able to do that without, you know, melting, which is what I used to do before. So yeah, when I discovered the ketogenic diet, it just completely changed how I ate. It made me all of that go away. I was able to start implementing fasting. I didn't even, like you said with veganism, I had brain fog where I couldn't concentrate very well at all.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I had it. And then when I started following the ketogenic diet, I was like, it feels like my brain's on fire some days. I was like, and the other thing was in work, I'd eat like a rice salad box, and I'd get this after lunch slump, and I'd hit about 3:30 in work, and the last hour and a half would just be like survival, you know. I'd just be sat there like, I can't wait to go home. And when I started following keto, I found my energy levels were just sustained good throughout the whole day. I'd be able to even finish work, get home from work, and then work on my side job, which is now my full-time job with APE, into the evening, and I'd have energy for it. So I don't think without that diet, I'd be able to have got where I've got now, to be honest.
Yeah, it fueled the next chapter of your life in many 100%. Ways. Yeah. Man, that's wild. I experimented a tiny bit with keto, but I guess the most I felt it was when I tried a carnivore diet. And that was, you actually did my second. I've done it 3 times, and me and you did it together for my second time. I think we did it about 10 days, 2 weeks. It was
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and the first time I did it, I really sensed like I lost it. Inflammation really went down. My brain did feel clearer in many ways, but I never quite got to a point when I had good energy. And so I'm trying to solve it. And the first few times I had a lot more dairy than I probably should have had.
Yeah.
So when I tried it the third time, I cut out the dairy. And so I was literally just eating mostly like ribeyes. I was eating like raw suet. I was just trying to get because everyone was like, you need to up the fats.
Yeah, you went in actually. You
So,
took it really serious.
I was just eating. I was like chewing suet, which is like the fat around the organs, around the kidneys and that of a cow or whatever. I was just chewing suet, and it was just normal for me. And I was getting bone marrows and scooping out the bone marrows, and the less I'd cook my steaks, the better I'd feel. So I was doing like 1 minute each side on my steaks, and so I'd have this plate of like raw suet, like pretty raw egg, and like pretty raw steak, and I'd just eat it. And again, I was focused on the health markers that did get better and not focused on the ones that were getting worse, which is, that's kind of the purpose of it. It was exploration. But I did do it properly with pretty much no dairy other than maybe cooking in ghee occasionally. And that time was like kind of like raw vegan in the sense I got really lean, but it was a lot easier to access emotions on that one because I'd had sugar. Sugar is, as we say, it kind of helps to mask or cover some stuff up. And when you're not doing it, I had to face all of the emotions I had attached to having sweetness in my day, and being addicted to that, if I'm honest. Like, I think a lot of us might be as well. So I was facing that. So I was able to face some emotions, and I was able to actually I think I did some growth in that period, but I was waiting for this kind of moment that people talk about is when like things just click and there's a shift happens in the body and you switch over to like ketogenic fuel source and you're able to just be fueled by fat and have all this energy for training and to be able to recover amazing. And so I was going to the gym when I had the energy for it, and I'd go and I'd have a pretty good session, and I'd feel like almost like I was floating sometimes and like buzzing, and like I felt more mobile in my body. I felt way more flexible than I've really felt because of the inflammation disappearing. And that's so amazing to witness how diet changes flexibility more than any yoga I've ever done. My diet's affected my flexibility.
And I think that's something that we've both kind of carried with us and that's something that I notice massively is if I have any sugar, so say, it's Saturday night, I'm like, right, I'm going to treat myself on the chocolate bar.
Yeah.
Always wake up the next morning and I feel stiff.
Yeah.
And there's a definite relationship there between processed sugar and like mobility in your body.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it might not be in every human, but I notice it so clearly. And the more I have those practices in my day, the more it's been self-evident. But I got the same thing from dairy. So having the no dairy, I was training and I'd have these good sessions, but then I would be so burnt out for like 3 or 4 days. I couldn't do anything. Like literally, I could barely like go for a walk or anything like that. Or like if I go for a walk, it'd be so hard to do, or I'd walk up a slight hill would just knock me out. And I did it for 4 weeks, and they say you need 8 weeks to fully adapt, maybe 12 to 12 weeks. So I can't speak from that perspective, but it got to a point when I was like, what am I doing? Like, I just couldn't picture a future. The coronavirus started to kick off, and I was committed to carnivore, and I was like, I don't want to be stuck in a city. I'm driving to the Brecon Beacons, and I packed a like cooler filled with just steaks. Yeah. And I just drove out there, and I went to a youth hostel, and I've got this cooler of steaks, and that's my life. I'm like, how am I going to try and like live and sort of avoid this and just live off of these steaks? And it just felt like this isn't the life. I need to find a way to eat as a normal human. I can't just like have to survive on steak. Like you can't just access steaks at any point, and it's super expensive as well. It's like just not survival. So I was like, came back anyway, and it was like, if I can just have rice and steaks, maybe that's a way to do it. But of course, for me, it's kind of like carbs is just a gateway to the next thing. And so any kind of carbs is a gateway to like more dairy, and then dairy is a gateway to like nuts, and nuts is a gateway to fruit, and fruit's a gateway to chocolate. It's kind of like there's just something in it that the carnivore it worked because the boundaries were set. I'm good at committing to something when it's really clear boundaries, and so the boundaries were you're just eating animal products, and as soon as you find a little loophole nuance, oh, but dairy, I can have dairy, that's an animal product, that tastes good. Honey, oh, that tastes good. Like so the real lesson is to recognize which foods make me go, I can't control myself, and then to just eliminate that. And what ends up is you end up at Whole Foods and natural Whole Foods, pretty much to a degree, and maybe there is some fruit, but if it was to be seasonal, it would be a pear. And if you eat it early in the morning, but more in line with your circadian rhythm before you go out, or eat it when you're out, it has way less effect than as a fruitarian. I'm always hungry. I was going to bed with the fullest belly, with so much food in my belly, bloated all the time. But on carnivore, zero bloat. And so that was just an amazing experiment. What it really truly made me realize, going from both extremes of like raw vegan to raw carnivore, basically, it was that to like cooked whole food vegan to like cooked carnivore and everything in between, is that and while I'm doing these things, I'm watching loads of YouTubers and people like Sean Baker and Phil Escott when I'm on Carnivore, and the Strong Sisters were really good content, and Paul Saladino, who I've met Paul, I've met Phil Escott when I was vegan, I'd met all the vegan influencers, Fully Raw Christina, and all in every world that I get into, these little niche pockets, I'm able to like go right up to the face, of the leaders of these movements, these influencers.
It's crazy actually thinking that you've met all those people.
All of them, and see like how are these, and see who's really balanced, see who's really healthy, and how many are just caught in a dogma and stuff. And they're all serving a purpose. And the thing is, the carnivore diet, you look at the meatheals.com or whatever, and you see people's and Michaela Peterson and that, who I've spoke to a bit as well. They all have amazing stories on this stuff. Like loads of the stories on there are amazing. So it definitely does help people because it just cuts out the crap. And the reason I think that works in that sense is, even if an animal, you can buy organic meat, and so the animal's being fed on better produce, but the animal's kind of organs are filtering the crap, like pesticides and stuff like that, to a degree. So there's like a layer of filtration by the animal, God have mercy on their souls, that filters from the chemtrails, from the pesticides, whatever. Whereas we're just eating this supermarket vegetables, which you just don't know how much trace spray is on that stuff. Even if you're getting organic, you don't know what's allowed, permissible through organic. And so when you eat carnivore, it's kind of like a hack into the system where the best hunters would have been the only ones that would have got the meat back in the day, or the hunters, and the best hunters would have got the best meat, and the strongest animals would be caught by the best hunters. And so we're able to just bypass the fact of hunting or raising a healthy animal, and we can just buy it from someone else who does the whole work for us. So it felt like a glitch into the system of, I can just eat meat without being a good hunter. So it helps to make me like strong and healthy in that way. But what all of these diets kind of do is, veganism and carnivore, they focus so much on the positives of the food the food group they eat, and the benefits and the minerals of those foods. And then they focus on the negatives of the other foods. And then, so the carnivores focus on the benefits and the healing and the recovery and the lack of digestive going on, the lack of bloat, because your acid's just breaking it down. Whereas the vegans, they have to do a lot more process. And when it goes through the stomach, it's being broken down. It's a harder process to break the vegetables down, or however they go into it. But it's on each side of the fence, they're focused on their positives and the negatives of the other. And it's just easy to do that. It's easy to get caught in that. When you're in that world and you're watching that stuff and other people are saying the same thing, every food we eat has a cost. That's what I realized, because I've done nothing but water, I've done nothing but meat, I've done nothing but fruit, I've done nothing but vegetables. Everything has a cost. Everything has a benefit and everything has a cost. So not one of these food groups is pure, is like 10 positive, 0 negative. Everything has a benefit and a cost.
I think that's a really good point to make, because, for example, when I ate like pretty much vegetarian, I ate vegetarian for that period when I was on the meditation retreat, I felt like my ability to meditate increased. And a lot of spiritual teachers will tell you that there's, like Paul Chek talks about, that animals have got like an energy field, and that when you're eating them, you're taking in that energy field, which distorts your internal energy field, and it makes it harder for you to meditate and stuff like that. And there's a lot of spiritual teachers who will, sort of back up that. And I felt that personally. And, my girlfriend, Izzy, she's a meditation teacher. She's a vegetarian. She's flicked in and out of eating meat, and she finds that her ability to meditate is better when she's vegetarian.
But that, just to caveat that, is like, to say vegetarian, it's like 3 months since I last had meat might be vegetarian. I could be vegetarian for one day and still say I'm vegetarian. Yeah. But it's like when you last had meat, because if it's a 5-year vegetarian, maybe they just need a bit of liver and a bit of fish, and then go back to another few years. Like at what point? I think you do need some at some point. And she has eaten meat occasionally or whatever. Exactly.
And what she tries to do is she tries to eat intuitively, which is, I think, the point that we're going to end up at. Which is, if your goal is spiritual exploration, then maybe a vegetarian or vegan diet might serve you for a period of time.
For most of the time, yeah.
Whereas if your goal is training, then actually you need to include some meat in your diet. And then what is your goal within training? Are you a bodybuilder? Because if you're a bodybuilder, you probably should be eating a high carb diet. You're not going to be able to get that amount of calories in otherwise. But if you're doing what we're doing, where we're trying to be, it's more of a functional fitness regime, then targeted ketogenic diet serves me amazingly well at the moment. But I think, like you said, with the whole veganism and carnivore thing, diets are so dogmatic. You get these communities, and a lot of people go in, enter into veganism or enter into carnivore from a place where they need healing.
Yeah.
And then they'll enter into that, and the diet will give them healing. Exactly. Like,
or they'll feel a shift.
Yeah. And it can often be sort of
a beneficial shift.
It'll be a beneficial shift, and it can often be like with veganism, with people going into veganism like yourself, where they were eating a sort of sad crap diet before, where you're just eating loads of processed foods, and then you start eating vegan, you cut out all the processed food. No wonder you feel better. And then just because you feel better immediately, you're like, this is the answer. And then you get caught in the dogma and the community of it. And then your whole people identify with being a vegan, and their ego latches on to being a vegan. And then all of a sudden they realize it, or they aren't able to accept that the diet isn't serving them anymore, and they need to move to something else. And that was one of the things that I've got to give massive credit to you for, because you were so entrenched in the vegan movement, 6 years. You were, like you said, you were kind of a poster boy for vegan athletes. You had a vegan clothing company, and you had the balls to come out and say, actually, veganism isn't serving me anymore, and step away from it. And, move away from, and that is a huge dent to your ego and like a huge paradigm shift for yourself.
That was what the journey was.
And
my attachment to veganism and veganism's attachment to me was the lesson, was the letting go.
And that's an incredible lesson for you to learn, right?
Oh, it was exactly what I needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't change that.
Bro, I'm so grateful for that period. Like, and I'm kind of proud of how I handled it. Regardless, if I can say that, but the decision made itself, and I didn't hesitate once it was made. But it's so interesting to witness that it is that. It's like we have a sample period, we get focused on what works, and then you become dogmatic about telling other people about why their thing's wrong. But it's great because veganism is a huge movement, and it's a conscious food movement, and we didn't need a conscious food movement 100 years ago because it was just, there wasn't processed food. So at some point it's got so far into factories and supermarkets and big business, big pharma and commercialism that we've had to become conscious and wake up to it. And so veganism was pretty much the first, there might be other diets out there, but veganism is the first attempt from modern times at a conscious food choice. Now, how often is the first attempt at something the best thing you've ever done? Not often. It takes a few swings at the bat, right, to get good. So veganism for me was the first attempt, like really being a conscious eater. Then carnivore was me I was still going to like organic butchers and stuff and semi-conscious, but I was like, let me just get healthy first. Like, let me think more about my health than the animals for a minute, because, God's plan is way bigger than what I can acknowledge. And so I'm trying to be so sure about, I need to save animals, and then there's loads of crop deaths on my,
and a detriment to your own health.
Exactly. So it was that when we're going to spiral dynamics another time, but it's that swings of like focused on the external, the group, the collective, swung to the internal, and swing back around to the external again as you grow in consciousness through the levels. But it is that going to carnivore and then coming out of that again and go, well, I almost got caught in another dogma there, but I needed to go to both sides of it, to the extremes. I've said it before, like to put a tent up, to make a tent stable, you need guy ropes and pegs, and the further you put the guy ropes and pegs away is the more stable the tent is. So the further extremes I've gone to help me to really know what the middle path is, and then understand how each sort of carbs, proteins, fats, what are they, the macros? They're called the macros, right? Macronutrients. How each of them affects my mood, my energy, my lifestyle in every way, and how each food group of animal foods and plant foods, how I kind of really understand now more than I ever have in the past, what each of them has, what the cost of any of them and the benefits of any of them. And now I have such a deeper understanding than ever before because I've experienced it. not because I'm reading literature on it, because I'm listening to someone else's science, but because I've lived it.
Yeah.
So now I'm able to make a far greater decisions for my health or my nutritional needs for my life going forwards from those experiences.
And I think one of the things you're good at, and you're better at this than I am, is you are good at eating intuitively. So that
I wouldn't say I'm good at it yet, though.
You're better than I am.
You think?
In the fact that when you have, you maybe have a non-training day or whatever, you're like, I got no need for red meat today, and you might have fish, or you might have a day like you said where you're vegetarian. Whereas I think me personally, like my ego is attached.
Only very in the last 2 weeks have I been able to, like, I feel like the weight's lifted and I've come to that. Go on, sorry.
You've got to that point, yeah.
And we'll go into where we're eating now, how we're eating now.
Whereas I think from an ego perspective, I'm attached to keeping my muscle mass on and being able to lift the weights that I can lift and all that sort of stuff. So I might have a non-training day and I'm still eating, red meat all day that day. And I think that's something that I personally need to work on, is be getting more intuitive with my eating and being able to go, right, actually, I'm not going to eat meat today, and not have that effect.
Not be attached to how you want to eat, how you want to eat in a way. So that's it's only come recently that I'm getting better at intuitive eating in a sense. But coming out of carnivore, and very recently, you mentioned to me last year, and then I inquired about it again this year, was the vertical diet, founded by Stan Efferdin. Yeah. And so you mentioned all these bodybuilders or these strongmen, right?
Yeah, strongmen. Yeah.
And you're like, they just eat 1 carrot a day, or like this spinach, cranberry juice, and they eat. The vertical diet is you eat all your micronutrients are met at a set amount. So you eat a set amount of spinach every day, a set amount of red pepper, a set amount of carrots, and a few other things. But then why it's called the vertical is because that's horizontal and set, and then you verticalize your red meat and rice and white rice. So red meat and white rice are kind of the easiest foods on the digestion. So anyone who has digestive issues, you're getting your carbs and your proteins and your fats in from those two sources for a lot less cost. So it's, in terms of everything as a cost, it's very cost effective for what you get, and you bang for your buck food wise. And you mentioned that to me, so I was like, let me dig into that a bit, because that's kind of the best of both worlds. You've got the carnivore with the red meat, and then you've got the veganism, which I had a lot of rice on my vegan days with the rice. And it's like, oh, maybe there's something in that where I bridge these two worlds together. And so I started to explore that as a diet, thanks to your recommendation. And I started to feel a bit better in that as well. And then very recently I've come out of that to how I'm currently eating. But that was the whole, you're talking about spiraling around the mountain and getting closer to the center. That felt like another one
extreme, other extreme, back to the center in a way.
Yeah, it was interesting.
But I think Stan Efferdin, it's an amazing diet that he's designed there.
I think it's a great middle ground for so many people.
But what people miss at the point of that, he developed that for strongmen. So he works with Brian Shaw. Brian Shaw, that absolute massive freak.
Yeah.
He works with him, and the problem with a lot of these guys is they eat so much food. I'm talking like 10,000 calories a day. They're absolute monsters.
Yeah.
That their digestion is
stressed all day.
Constantly stressed. And then on top of that, they're lifting obscene weights. Like, all you need to, for anyone that hasn't watched it, type in YouTube day eating with Eddie Hall. Honestly, I felt sick after about 5 minutes of watching it.
I've not watched
the amount of food he eats is a joke.
Yeah.
And he's eating food, training, napping. He literally, lives like a baby with training schedule. Like, that's, it's just food, sleep. So he designed it for guys like this who have got a massive amount of stress on their body just purely through the amount of heavy training they're doing and the amount of calories they're eating. So he wanted to create that horizontal axis to have minimal stress load on them. So it was like the smallest amount of each vegetable you can eat, and he's got stuff like dark chocolate in there to get your magnesium in and stuff like that.
Really low FODMAP as well.
And that's why it's such low FODMAP, because you've got such small amounts of each of these vegetables.
And there were the vegetables that don't bloat you as well.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's like not broccoli, it's cauliflower instead of broccoli.
Exactly. So it's an amazing diet for that. But I think for it's a good diet generally as well. But if you haven't got that massive stress on your body, you can be a little bit more loose with it in terms of adding, a few more veg.
But as a strict baseline for most humans that have no idea with knowledge with nutrition, I actually think it's quite an effective one for all walks of life to start with. If you wanted to start somewhere. So where are you at now then? What's your? Are you ketogenic right now?
So at the moment, I'm following targeted keto approach, and I'm being quite strict with it. I'd kind of gone off, I'd been a little bit more loose with my carbs because I try and eat ancestrally. So I try and follow the patterns my ancestors would have eaten with their diet. So, for example, during the winter months, especially in areas of the world like this, ground would have frozen, no fruits or vegetables would have grown. Our ancestors would have become nomadic people traveling, hunting animals. So during the winter months, I try to really limit my carbs and go into more strict ketosis. And then I think it was December we did carnivore, wasn't it, last year? And I think this year, again, I'm going to do a period of carnivore during the coldest months.
Nice, document it, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll document it, yeah. I'm going to do a thing on it. And then during the summer, I'll eat some more carbs because ancestrally, fruits would have grown on trees, vegetables would have grown. Yeah. So our ancestors would have had access to more vegetables, and that actually perfectly aligns with the cycles of the earth because, in the summer we have more sun. When our skin gets more vitamin D, we've got a better ability to handle carbohydrates. Yeah. So it really feels like eating that way is not only in line with our ancestry, but it's also in line with the natural cycles of the earth. Yeah. Which is, kind of the way we try and live our life as a whole, as opposed to just follow our nutritional approach. Yeah. So that's what I do. But I've got a little bit more loose with my carbs, but just like you said, carbs are like a gateway to more carbs.
It can be, so absolutely.
I was getting a little bit more loose, and then you get that craving for a bit more, and I was eating more than I should have been eating in terms of carbohydrates, although it was still pretty clean. So I've cut it back down to I'm going to do a couple weeks of strict targeted keto, and see what that does. I'm going to document what that does to my body.
So one on that point you just made. One guy explained it, some keto doctor, was that we have, if you put out like as much steak as you want, you will hit a very clear point when you're full on that steak. Yeah. So your body has like a mechanism that tells you when you're done eating proteins and fats. It knows when you've had enough, but it doesn't have a mechanism for carbs, which is why we can overeat carbs, because it just doesn't say, there's no notice from the body going, you've had enough now. I think we're done here. It doesn't have that, but proteins and fats it does, which is why you kind of want to eat them in every meal, even if you are eating carbs.
We've got in carbohydrates, so naturally, like obviously animals have got a defense mechanism and they can run or fight. With fruit and vegetables, they have anti-nutrients in them, which is a big argument for the carnivore movement, which is a whole another topic we can get to another time. But basically these anti-nutrients stop you from wanting to overeat carbohydrates. When they're in nature, like natural carbohydrates, like you'll never eat a whole bag of apples, for example. You have one apple, you're like, all right, I've had enough.
Tried to as a vegan, a raw vegan.
You might have eaten a whole bag of apples actually. Yeah. But generally you don't feel the desire to do that. But when people are making synthetic carbohydrates, like what you got to understand is these companies, Kellogg's, and all the companies cut from that sort of cloth, they understand the science behind nutrition. They understand the perfect combination of salt and sweet and fat, and et cetera, that make these foods addictive.
Moorish.
And what they do is and that's why when you eat an Oreo, you want to eat the whole bag of Oreos. Yeah. They design these foods in such a way that you want to smash the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And in nature,
the Matrix.
Our ancestors, say they would have stumbled across, honey, for example, in nature. They wouldn't have known. They might have not stumbled across honey again for another year or 2 years. So they would have eaten the whole thing. We're wired to do that because they're like, we don't know when we're going to come across it again. Yeah. But our biology hasn't caught up to modern society. Yeah. And, our body doesn't understand you can go to...
So we're being hacked by these guys. Being used against us. Our biology's been used against us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's a dangerous game out there, which is why you have to take control and just to recognize the foods that do that and just to know where they are. What works for me with rice is I just I do a cup of rice, cook it. If I was to do a big portion of rice and go, I've tried it once and I was like, don't do that. I'll just cook rice for the day. And then when I want some rice in a bit, I'll have some more rice.
Yeah.
No, because it just gets it. So I just cook one portion, eat it, and then I go about my day.
Yeah.
Right. It's like that. But if I was to just have a big portion on the side, I'd keep going back for more spoons of it.
Yeah.
But how I'm currently eating, the adaptation, I did play a bit with two other diets, Peat Diet, which people might have heard of. We won't go into that. Which more talks about kind of bioenergetic type diet. But that's kind of high carb, like lots of orange juice and lots of milk, like dairy. And I just don't get on with dairy at the moment. And then the Protocol, which is Strong Fit's diet, I think there might be something to that because he's tried to angle the diet to respect the nervous system. And I think that's something that only the leading edge of people are starting to like recognize the importance of respecting the nervous system and understanding which state you're in, parasympathetic or sympathetic, and trying to live in accordance with that in each moment, with the choices we're doing, with how we're training, with our food we're eating. And so he's angled a diet that's actually thinking about the nervous system in mind. And I think there's something to that. So that's something that if you want to look at the other lifestyles, that's kind of keto. He's kind of carbs around training. It's kind of targeted keto, right? Fats when you're doing mind work, and then protein in the evening before you go to bed. Protein puts you into a parasympathetic state, I think. Relaxed state. So only eat it when you can be relaxed, and then only eat carbs when you need to be amped up or can be amped up, because it's going to put you into a sympathetic state. So those are the things I played with. But right now, I came out of so about 3 weeks ago, I was just not feeling satisfied again. Since I did the 35-day fast, I haven't done a single fast or experimented with fasting. I've not even been doing much intermittent fasting, which, I started to have breakfast. And the thing is, some days I'll have breakfast at like 9 o'clock and I'm like, should I just wait till 12 to eat? And I'll just have a breakfast. And then it will come 2 in the afternoon and I'm out active doing something. And I'm like, I'm so glad I had breakfast because it's fueled me till 2, 3 o'clock and I've not thought about it. And so I'm like, breakfast has got a place. And then other days I've not eaten and it's got to like 12 o'clock and I'll be starving and then I'll eat at 12. And that was just the way it's meant to be. So there's no like set rule of, but I think you can stress the body a bit with always intermittent fasting, always wait until, and most people that intermittent fast generally do it like, they can get through the morning till 1 or 2 o'clock and then they'll have an 8-hour window till 10 o'clock at night or something like that, or even 8 o'clock at night. It's pretty late to be eating an evening meal before bed. That's a huge thing that I learned, was trying to get more of your food in early. So have like a breakfast and a big lunch and then maybe a smaller evening meal at about 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock if you can.
Oh, really? You go that early?
That early. And then just have like some nuts or something lighter later.
Okay.
Right, but get your meal in as early as you can, and then you go into bed as light as possible. Because when you're lying flat, digestion, we all know walking helps digestion because one, you're vertical. 2, you're kind of gently massaging the organs. Well, a big part of that is being vertical. As soon as you go horizontal, it's almost like lights out for digestion. So it's just stewing in like whatever acids are there to help it. But in terms of like traveling down this long ass intestines, it's not got the assistance of gravity or magnetism, whatever's pulling it down, to do it when you're lying down. So really trying to get that evening meal in. And if you look at the circadian rhythm, it's like the liver's more active in the morning and stuff. So certain things, I think breakfast can be an important meal, but it's not to say every day of the week you should do it. Maybe do intermittent fast a couple of days a week just to like show your body you can skip a meal and keep going, but don't need to put that on every single meal. But so a few weeks ago, I was just like, I'm just sick of how I'm feeling. That I just know I needed to get a bit deeper on my spirituality and connect a bit further with God. And I thought, let me do a fast. I've not fasted since the 35-day fast, because you do that long, it's just kind of like, it's the last thing in your mind you want to do again.
Yeah, you've done a few years worth.
There. Yeah. But on that point, I should have, the real lesson is to do is as Bruce Lee said, long-term consistency beats short-term intensity. And I'm just that young mindset of like, let me just get this done and let me just get this fast done. Let me just bang out 35 days and get on with life, and I don't have to do it again. Whereas the harder thing to do would be to do 10 3-day fasts over a year. Yeah. But that would probably be, or maybe more beneficial. I don't know. I've not done that. But that could be the way to go. Anyway, I hadn't done a fast in a year and a half, 2 years. Was that I need to do a 1-day fast. And for me, a 1-day fast, 24 hours doesn't really count as a 1-day fast. If you eat at 6 o'clock at night and then wait a whole day and eat at 6 o'clock the next night, yes, it's 24 hours. But the real kind of fasting comes into play when you miss that meal. If you go to bed one night wake up the next day, don't eat the whole day and go to bed that second night with no food in your stomach, then you've experienced fasting. Then you've, like, for me, that's truly like you've not fasted until you've done that second night with no food in your belly and laid in bed and thought about it. That's when you start to connect with something deeper. And so I did that a few weeks ago. I just thought I needed to. It was a miserable day. I didn't do much that day, didn't have much energy. And we'll go into this when we do the healing episode about sort of facing emotions and ways to get into that, because you need to get into if that low feeling is there, it's there. You need to face it rather than suppress it with things like food that we constantly go to suppress those feelings. So I did that one day fast and came out of it. And it kind of just helped me reminisce from a part of my life that I'd completely rejected when I'd come out of veganism, and I knew I was doing it at the time, but understanding it logically and doing it is two different things. But it's helped me to eat less meat now, basically. And at the moment, we have red meat occasionally when you guys, Lewis made amazing lamb shoulder the other day, and I'm not going to turn that down.
So good.
And Mo cooked us some ribeye and some mince the other week, and I'm not going to turn that down. That was great. But then in between it, I've not been buying meat or stocking meat in my house. I've just been getting fish, and I've been having my rice I've still been having sort of red meat I've been cooking my rice in bone broth, and I've got some frozen liver that I've chopped up that's in the freezer, and so every day or so I'll put a few bits of frozen liver in the rice that I cook in bone broth. So I'm getting the maximum. The most nutritious part of the animal is the organs, right? And the liver being one of the most mineral-rich part of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting all the benefits of that with less of the weight that I get when I eat the red meat, and then also the bone broth, which is getting is it collagen and
collagen,
all the benefits of the bone broth cooked in the rice. So I'm making like a superfood rice charged with these parts of the animals, which are like kind of the offcuts. They're not the reason the animals.
Sounds great, by the way. That meal.
Yeah, it is so nutritious. So I'm trying to find the most bang for the buck. So it's kind of like my vertical diet in a way, where you're getting the most nutritious for the least cost. And it's nose to tail with the animal. You're using the bones and the organ meats.
Yep.
So you could put I know we tried brain one time and you weren't quite up for it, but put it in some rice and I'm sure you'd.
Yeah, it'd be melted in. It was like, the texture just freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah, so I just make that little my rice cooker, some frozen peas in there, a bit of salt and a bit of that. And then I just had some earlier with some zucchini noodles. And once a day at the moment in the evening, normally I'll cook fish and have it with that. I might have eggs after a workout, or if I'm going to do some exercise, have eggs, but time that again more purposely, not just because there was a point when I couldn't have a meal without having eggs, as flipping Eggman. So it's just helped me. That one day fast just helped reset and helped rekindle a chapter of my life that was an important chapter that's still in me, but bringing it full circle with the understanding the power and beauty of animal products and what they can do for you and the strength they can give you and the groundedness that comes with that. So trying to find this balance between it all and choose it target. Like we're going to work out tomorrow, right? And if we do that, I think I will have red meat tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Paul Chek talked about it when I was on his podcast, and he talks about it.
He's a big advocate of that. Yeah.
For when you move muscle, you can eat muscle, and when you're doing more day-to-day stuff or going for walks and household stuff, eat a bit more of a vegetarian, pescatarian.
And when you're in touch with your body, you can feel that, right? Your body craves the red meat after a big training session.
Yeah. I will find out. I'm still quite new to this side of thinking, but I feel like I've turned the corner with it, and I'm quite once again excited for exploring with my Tim Sheaf diet. That's just for me. I'm not laming a diet, but
and I think that is what everyone's trying to find, right? That's the ultimate goal: is you find the diet that works for you. Where you can follow your intuition, you're not dogmatic. If one day you feel like you need some meat, then eat the meat. If the next day you feel like you need to eat vegetarian that day, eat vegetarian that day, and follow the diet that serves you day to day, and recognize that you're not the same man you are today that you're going to be next week or next month. So the diet that works for you now might not be the diet that works for you in 6 months' time, might not be the same diet that works for you in 3 years' time, probably won't be.
No, it changes so much. But keep exploring. Keep exploring, keep asking the questions. The end goal might be that you are the placebo and the food doesn't have as much a factor as we think. But you don't know until you've explored every avenue, and all that's left is to go within and look inside. But yeah, that was a really good chat. All right, we got
How
a
long
lot.
did we go?
Hour 20.
Well, that's probably the longest one.
That is one of the longest ones so far. So we'll wrap up there. Thanks for all the viewers. We've put out every Wednesday now. We put out a video on YouTube, a training session. A video just went out today. We record on Wednesdays of the rope session we did the other day. My intermediate course is officially out. The rope intermediate course. Get up to speed with that. Weartherope.co.uk, and the heavier rope for those that want a heavier rope. Someone asked me, "What's the purpose of the heavier rope?" And it basically, because it's heavier when you're swinging it, it's about 24% heavier than the last rope. It's more of a workout rope, so it draws on more muscle fibers. It recruits more muscle fibers to make it happen. So it buries the patterns deeper into your posture and into your movement patterns because it calls on more muscle as you swing it. But if you've never done the rope before, I would not recommend going with a heavier rope off the bat unless you're someone like Josh, who's maybe a bit. But I'd still recommend someone like him probably.
Yeah, I think it's definitely best to start with the standard rope.
Yeah.
And then work your way up, because it is quite a bit heavier, that other rope.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
It's a good amount. That's what's been going on with my world and Wear the Rope. That's out there. You've got new product, the form of clothing.
Oh yeah, we've just released the Rediscover Human t-shirt. They're on the website now.
They're cool, man. I like them.
Yeah, I'm happy with them. I'm really happy with
them. And they
are
Rediscover Human, so it's kind of like the podcast.
Yeah, kind
t-shirt.
of. Yeah. So it's got the Rediscover Human on the back. It's got the ape logo on the front.
Yeah.
It's just black at the moment.
Mine's just come out the wash. I'm saving it for the right day.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow.
They're good, man. I like them. Good fit. I'm really happy with them.
I don't wear many t-shirts with branding on them, but I wear that one. I do that's genuinely like that. So that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so website is www.apenutrition.co.uk. We've got the t-shirts. We've got CBD oil in 5 and 10% strength. We got MCT oil, and we got keto bars on there as well. And then the Instagram is ape_nutrition. And if anyone's got any other questions about keto, targeted keto, or anything like that, DM me on Instagram. It's the best way to get hold of me. And I'll do my best to get back to you and answer your questions.
Yeah, man. Matt, I'm glad we strayed away from the peak times. There's just, we'll talk about it maybe next episode, but there's just the whole mask thing and all that coming in is just quite an interesting topic that maybe I shouldn't even mention here, but we'll see what, maybe next episode we'll go into healing or something. But yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in for this episode and for hearing us share our stories, and I hope you get something out of it and find some greater health and rediscover your human.
Thanks a lot, guys.